What happens when a group of troublemakers mistakes a royal guard's disciplined silence for weakness? At Windsor Castle, a seemingly simple act of harassment unravels into something far more sinister, proving that sometimes the quietest soldiers hold the deadliest secrets. Standing motionless at Windsor Castle's south wing entrance, Marcus Turner cut an impressive figure in his ceremonial red uniform. The morning sun glinted off his polished buttons and the tall black hat sitting perfectly aligned on his head. Tourists gathered around him, smartphones raised, whispering and pointing at his statue-like stillness. Some tried to make him smile, others waved, but Marcus remained frozen, his eyes fixed straight ahead. 5 years of service as a royal guard had taught him patience, but 15 years in special forces had taught him something more valuable: how to spot trouble before it arrived. And trouble was definitely approaching. At the edge of the growing crowd, 4 young men huddled together, their attention fixed on Marcus. Unlike the other tourists, they weren't taking photos or admiring the tradition. Their leader, Tommy Reed, stood out with his designer jacket and expensive sunglasses, despite the cloudy weather. His carefully styled hair and swagger spoke of someone used to getting his way. "Look at this guy," Tommy said, loud enough for nearby tourists to hear. He nudged his friend Luke, who was already live streaming with his phone. "Thinks he's so tough just standing there like a statue. Bet he won't even blink if I mess with him." Luke grinned, adjusting his camera angle. "Comments are rolling in, mate. They want to see you make him crack." Chris Wilson, the largest of the group, cracked his knuckles. "Probably scared under that fancy hat. Or asleep," Jake Morris added, drawing laughs from their growing online audience. The crowd shifted uneasily. Some tourists stepped back, while others pulled out their phones, anticipating drama. A few concerned voices suggested calling security, but curiosity kept them watching. Marcus remained still, but his trained eyes had already assessed the situation. The way Tommy and his crew kept glancing toward the castle's service entrance, the subtle hand signals between them, this wasn't just about harassment. His military instincts kicked in, recognizing the telltale signs of a coordinated operation. Tommy stepped closer, invading Marcus's personal space. "What's wrong, soldier boy? Cat got your tongue?" He waved his hand in front of Marcus's face, his gold rings flashing in the sunlight. "Or are you just a mannequin in a fancy costume?" The other tourists watched in uncomfortable silence as Tommy circled Marcus like a shark. Luke kept his phone steady, narrating for his viewers. "We're live at Windsor Castle, folks, about to see if these famous guards are really as tough as they say." That's when Marcus noticed something in his peripheral vision. A figure in a maintenance uniform moving too quickly, too purposefully toward the service entrance. The worker carried a large case that seemed too heavy for its size. Tommy's voice snapped his attention back. Maybe he needs a wake-up call. Without warning, Tommy reached for Marcus's hat. The crowd gasped as Tommy's fingers grasped the brim, but before he could lift it, a sharp voice cut through the tension. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, young man." The crowd parted to reveal Emily Wright, an elderly woman leaning on an ornate walking stick. Her grey hair and tourist guide badge made her seem harmless, but Marcus recognized the steel in her voice and the way she carried herself. Military training never quite fades. Tommy turned, his face twisted in amusement. "Mind your business, Grandma. This is between me and the tin soldier here." Emily's walking stick tapped twice against the cobblestones. Tap, tap. To most, it seemed like a nervous gesture, but Marcus recognized the old military signal. Hostile situation. Be ready. "Last warning," Emily said calmly, her eyes never leaving Tommy's face. "Step away from the guard." Tommy laughed, turning back to Marcus. "Or what? You'll hit me with your stick." The live stream comments exploded with excitement as Tommy grabbed Marcus's hat again, but this time he made his biggest mistake. He tried to pull it off. Marcus moved. It happened so fast that Luke's camera barely caught it. One moment, Marcus was statue still. The next, his hand had caught Tommy's wrist in an iron grip. With one fluid motion, he stepped forward, using Tommy's own momentum to spin him around. The crowd gasped. Luke stumbled backward, nearly dropping his phone. "Holy shit!" "Step back," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of command. It was the first time he'd spoken, and the authority in his tone froze everyone in place. Tommy's face had lost all its color as he stared into Marcus's eyes, finally recognizing the danger he'd provoked. Behind him, Chris and Jake began backing away, their tough guy act crumbling. But Marcus wasn't focused on them anymore. His attention had shifted to the service entrance, where two more maintenance workers had appeared, both carrying similar heavy cases. They moved with too much purpose, their uniforms too new. Emily's voice carried across the courtyard. "I believe it's time for you boys to leave." Tommy nodded quickly, retreating with his friends, but Marcus caught the subtle glance between Tommy and the maintenance workers. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. As the crowd dispersed, whispers and excited chatter filling the air, Marcus remained at his post, his posture perfect once again. But his mind was racing, processing every detail of what he'd just witnessed. The maintenance workers had disappeared inside the castle, and Tommy's crew lingered at the edges of the courtyard, their phones still recording. Emily Wright positioned herself near a tour group, seemingly explaining the castle's architecture. But her sharp eyes never stopped scanning the surroundings. She guided her group closer to Marcus's position, and as they passed, she spoke quietly. Three men, service entrance, carrying equipment cases, too heavy for their claimed contents. Her voice was barely a whisper, meant only for Marcus's ears. "And our young troublemakers are still here, waiting." Marcus gave the slightest nod, acknowledging the information without breaking his stance. Through years of military service, he'd learned to trust his instincts, and right now, every instinct was screaming that something bigger was unfolding. Tommy Reed and his friends had retreated to a bench near the castle wall. Luke was still live streaming, but their earlier bravado had been replaced by urgent whispered conversations and frequent glances at their phones. "Look at him now," Tommy muttered to his viewers, trying to maintain his confident facade. "Got lucky once, but he's back to playing statue, probably shaking under that uniform." Luke zoomed his camera in on Marcus. "Comments are going crazy, mate. Some saying we should try again, others saying we should back off." "We're not done," Tommy snapped, but his voice carried an edge of nervousness. "Just wait." Chris Wilson, still rubbing his wrist where Marcus had gripped him, leaned closer. "Maybe we should bail, Tommy. That guard's not normal. And that old lady—" "Shut up," Tommy hissed. "We stick to the plan. You know what happens if we don't." Marcus caught the exchange, noting the fear that flashed across Tommy's face. These weren't just troublemakers looking for social media fame. They were working for someone, playing their part in a larger scheme. Commander David Hayes' voice crackled in Marcus's hidden earpiece. "Turner, you copy?" Marcus gave a subtle cough, their signal for affirmative. "Something's not right in the East Wing. Security cameras in the medieval artifact section just went dark. Maintenance claims they're doing routine work, but no scheduled maintenance was logged for today." Marcus's jaw tightened. The East Wing housed some of Windsor Castle's most valuable historical artifacts, including the recently acquired Wessex collection, priceless pieces of Anglo-Saxon jewelry and ceremonial weapons. Emily's voice came through his earpiece next. "David, I've got movement in the garden. Two more individuals in maintenance uniforms, carrying similar cases. They're heading toward the old service tunnel entrance." "Copy that," Hayes responded. "Marcus, hold position for now. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we move." But Marcus had already spotted something else. Robert Mitchell, the assistant curator, was walking quickly across the courtyard, his usual meticulous appearance disheveled. He kept checking his phone, his hands shaking slightly as he typed. The pieces were starting to fit together. The fake maintenance crew, Tommy's coordinated distraction, and now Mitchell's suspicious behavior. This was professional, planned, and about to get worse. Luke's live stream suddenly spiked in viewers as Tommy stood up, his cockiness returning. "All right, people," he announced to his audience. "Time for round 2 with our favorite toy soldier." But this time, Marcus was ready. As Tommy approached, flanked by his friends, Emily Wright appeared beside them, her walking stick tapping sharply against the stone. "I wouldn't," she said simply. Tommy turned, his smile faltering slightly. "Still here, Grandma? Don't you have some tourists to bore?" Emily's smile was razor sharp. Fascinating thing about Windsor Castle. So many secrets, so many hidden passages. Perfect for smuggling, wouldn't you say? The color drained from Tommy's face. Behind him, Luke lowered his phone slightly, the live stream forgotten. "Don't." "Know what you're talking about," Tommy said, but his voice cracked. Emily's walking stick shot out faster than seemed possible, hooking Tommy's ankle.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
He stumbled, catching himself against the wall. "Your friend in the East Wing," Emily continued casually, "the one with the heavy cases. He just tripped every silent alarm in the medieval gallery." Marcus watched the exchange, noting how Tommy's crew was slowly spreading out, trying to block views of the service entrance. But they'd forgotten about the tourists. Dozens of phones were still recording, catching every moment. Commander Hayes' voice crackled again in Marcus's earpiece. "Turner, we've got confirmation. 4 unauthorized individuals in the East Wing, approaching the Wessex collection. Mitchell was seen letting them in. Permission granted to engage." Marcus had been waiting for those words. In one fluid motion, he stepped away from his post, drawing gasps from the crowd. Tommy and his friends froze, suddenly realizing they were caught between a highly trained royal guard and a surprisingly dangerous elderly woman. "Luke Parker," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "Chris Wilson, Jake Morris." Each name made them flinch. "And Tommy Reed. Working. For Richard Blackwood, I presume." The name hit them like a physical blow. Luke's phone clattered to the ground, the live stream still running. Tommy's face went from pale to ashen. "How did you—" Tommy started, but Emily cut him off. "The Crown Hunters always use the same playbook," she said, her tourist guide persona completely gone. Create a public distraction, slip in through service entrances, corrupt an inside man. Richard, the collector. Blackwood hasn't changed his methods in 20 years. Marcus took a step forward, and Tommy's crew stumbled backward. "Where is he?" "You don't understand," Tommy pleaded, real fear in his voice now. "He'll kill us. If we talk, he'll kill you anyway," Emily said softly. "You're loose ends now. But we can protect you if you help us stop him." A crash echoed from inside the castle, followed by shouting. Marcus's hand moved to his ceremonial sword, which, unlike what tourists believed, was very real and very sharp. "Time's up," he said. "Choose now." Tommy looked at his friends, then at the service entrance where Blackwood's men were undoubtedly stealing priceless artifacts, and finally at Marcus. The young troublemaker's shoulders slumped. "He's here," Tommy whispered, "in the tunnel system below the East Wing. There's a buyer meeting him in 20 minutes. The whole thing with your hat, the live stream, it was supposed to keep security. Focused out here while they grabbed the Anglo-Saxon stuff." Marcus nodded to Emily, who immediately spoke into her hidden microphone, relaying the information. Then he turned back to Tommy. "Stay here," he ordered. "When the police arrive, tell them everything. It's your only chance." As if on cue, sirens began to wail in the distance. But Marcus was already moving, his red uniform bright against the ancient castle walls as he headed for the East Wing. Behind him, he heard Emily's walking stick tapping against the stone as she followed. "Just like old times," she called after him. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. The real fight was about to begin, and Richard Blackwood was about to learn why you never mistake a royal guard's discipline for weakness. Marcus moved swiftly through Windsor Castle's east wing, his ceremonial uniform a flash of red against the ancient stone walls. The tourist-filled corridors had been quietly cleared, leaving an eerie silence broken only by distant footsteps echoing through the castle's vast chambers. Emily Wright kept pace behind him, her walking stick making surprisingly little noise as she moved with the grace of someone half her age. "The tunnel entrance is through the medieval gallery," she whispered. "Two lefts, then a right past the armor display." Commander Hayes's voice crackled in their earpieces. "Security cameras in the lower levels are being looped. Our tech team is working to restore the feed, but you're going in blind." "Just like Budapest," Emily muttered, earning a raised eyebrow from Marcus. As they approached the medieval gallery, the sound of breaking glass stopped them in their tracks. Through the partially open doors, they could see two men in maintenance uniforms carefully removing items from the Wessex Collection's display cases. Robert Mitchell, the assistant curator, stood nearby, nervously checking his phone. The ceremonial "Sword!" one of the thieves barked at Mitchell. "Where is it?" Mitchell's hands shook as he pointed to a locked case at the far end of the gallery. "It's there, but the security system—" "Override it," the thief demanded. "Now." Marcus signaled to Emily, who nodded and moved to flank the other entrance. Years of military training took over as Marcus assessed the situation. Two armed thieves, one nervous accomplice, and priceless artifacts at risk. "Timer's running," the second thief announced, checking a sleek black device. "Boss wants us in the tunnels in 3 minutes." Marcus pressed his comlink. "Commander, we need backup at the medieval gallery. 2 hostiles armed. Mitchell is confirmed involved." "Copy that," Hayes responded. "Teams are en route, but we've got another problem. Police caught Tommy and his crew trying to flee. Blackwood has a secondary team in the castle gardens." Emily's voice came through next. "They're creating multiple exit routes. Classic Blackwood strategy." Marcus watched as Mitchell fumbled with the security panel, his trembling fingers missing the code twice before finally getting it right. The case's lock disengaged with a soft click. "Got it," the first thief announced, carefully lifting out an ancient Anglo-Saxon sword, its gold hilt studded with precious stones. Package secured. "This is worth more than everything else combined," the second thief said, already wrapping the sword in protective cloth. "Boss says some Saudi prince is paying 8 figures for this alone." Mitchell wrung his hands. "You promised no one would get hurt." "Shut up!" the first thief snapped. "Just get the tunnel access open, and remember, one word about this to anyone, and your gambling debts become the least of your problems," the second thief finished. Marcus had heard enough. He stepped into the doorway, his own sword drawn. "Windsor Castle security," he announced. "Step away from the artifacts." The thieves spun around, their eyes widening at the sight of a royal guard with a very real sword pointed at them. Mitchell stumbled backward, knocking over a small display stand. "It's just one guard," the first thief said, reaching for something under his uniform. "Take him." But Emily had already moved. Her walking stick shot out, catching the second thief's wrist as he drew a pistol. The weapon clattered to the floor as Emily's next strike took him behind the knees, sending him sprawling. The first thief managed to pull his gun, but Marcus was faster. His sword flashed in the gallery lights, knocking the weapon aside before the pommel struck the thief's solar plexus. The man doubled over, gasping. Mitchell made a break for the door, but Emily's walking stick hooked his ankle, dropping him face first onto the polished floor. "Going somewhere, Robert?" Emily asked. Pleasantly, "I believe Commander Hayes would love to hear about those gambling debts." Marcus secured the thieves, while Emily kept Mitchell covered. Commander, medieval gallery secured. 3 detainees, artifacts recovered. Good work, Hayes responded, but we've got movement in the tunnels. Multiple heat signatures heading toward the old wine cellar exit. Blackwood's main team is on the move. Marcus checked the thieves' equipment, professional-grade tools, communications gear, and detailed maps of the castle's layout. These aren't just thieves, he noted. Military, training, high-end gear. Blackwood only hires ex-special forces, Emily confirmed. Usually Eastern European. These 2 look Serbian, maybe Croatian. The first thief spat something in Serbian, making Emily smile coldly. Yes, she replied in the same language. I did understand that. And no, you really don't want to make me angry. Marcus secured the Anglo-Saxon sword, carefully returning it to its case. Mitchell, start talking. What's Blackwood's real target? The curator's assistant was shaking, his facade of sophistication completely shattered. I don't know everything, he stammered, just that the sword was phase 1. There's something else, something in the old palace strong room. Blackwood said it would make the sword look like a trinket. Emily's eyes narrowed. The strong room was sealed decades ago. Nothing's been stored there since... She stopped, her face paling slightly. Oh no! What? Marcus demanded. During the Cold War, the palace stored certain items there, things too sensitive for normal vaults. I was involved in the security setup back then. She turned to Mitchell. How did Blackwood know about it? But before Mitchell could answer, an explosion rocked the castle. Dust rained from the ceiling as alarms began blaring throughout the building. Report! Marcus barked into his comm. Hayes's voice was tight with tension. Explosion in the garden. Blackwood's second team just blew the old tunnel entrance. They're creating a diversion. Another explosion, closer this time, made the display cases rattle. Multiple breaches, Hayes continued. They're targeting all known exits, trying to draw security away from something. Emily grabbed Mitchell's collar. The strong room. How is Blackwood planning to access it? There's another way in, Mitchell gasped. Through the original medieval tunnels. They were sealed up centuries ago, but Blackwood found old plans in the royal archives. That's why he needed me, to verify the documents. Marcus's mind raced. If Blackwood had found a forgotten entrance to the strong room, he could bypass all modern security. And if Emily's reaction was anything to go by, whatever was stored there was worth far more than a priceless Anglo-Saxon sword. Commander, we need teams at every known tunnel exit, Marcus ordered. But Blackwood's not planning to use any of them. He's found another way out. The river, Emily said suddenly. The original medieval tunnels ran all the way to the Thames. That's why they were sealed. They were a security risk. But if Blackwood's found them... He's got a water escape route, Marcus finished. All these explosions, Tommy's distraction, even the sword, they're all elaborate misdirection. Hayes's voice crackled with static. Windsor police are reporting suspicious activity near the river. Multiple boats, high-end equipment. Marcus turned to Emily. You helped set up the strong room security. What's Blackwood really after? Emily's face was grim. Something that should never see the light of day. During the Cold War, certain items were recovered from Soviet agents. Things that could destabilize. Governments exposed decades of secrets. We stored the most dangerous pieces here, thinking no one would ever find them. More explosions echoed through the castle as Marcus processed this information. Blackwood wasn't just a thief. He was after state secrets that could be worth billions to the right buyers. Commander, Marcus said, get these 3 into custody. Emily and I are heading for the strong room. Send coordinates for any structural changes that might reveal the old tunnel entrance. Be careful, Hayes warned. Thermal imaging shows at least 6 more hostiles in the tunnel system. Marcus nodded to Emily. Ready for this? The former MI5 agent smiled, her walking stick gleaming in the gallery lights. Haven't had this much fun since Berlin." As they moved out, Marcus couldn't help but feel that the confrontation at the gates, a simple attempt to steal his hat, had been just the beginning. Somewhere in Windsor Castle's ancient tunnels, Richard Blackwood was about to learn why you never underestimate a royal guard or a seemingly harmless tour guide. The ancient tunnels beneath Windsor Castle echoed with distant explosions as Marcus and Emily descended deeper into the darkness. Their footsteps were silent against the damp stone, centuries of history pressing in around them. Emergency lights cast long shadows across walls that had witnessed countless secrets. The original medieval passage should connect with the main tunnel system just ahead, Emily whispered, her walking stick tapping quietly as she checked the floor stability. The strong room entrance was built into the old foundations. Marcus moved cautiously, his ceremonial uniform now covered by tactical gear provided by Commander Hayes. The weight of his sword was complemented by modern equipment: radio, tactical light, and body armor. "Movement ahead," he murmured, holding up his hand. Through his night vision gear, he could see fresh scuff marks on the tunnel floor. "At least 3 sets of tracks." Emily nodded. "They're getting close to the strong room. Once they breach it," a voice echoed through their earpieces. "All units be advised, we've lost contact with teams 3 and 4 near the garden exit. External cameras show multiple armed suspects converging on the river access points." Commander Hayes' voice followed. "Turner, right. Thermal imaging shows 6 hostiles in your sector, moving fast. They know we're coming." Suddenly, the tunnel lights flickered and died, plunging them into complete darkness, except for their tactical lights. Emily's walking stick tapped twice against the stone. Danger close. "They're cutting power to the security systems," Marcus said, switching to his backup radio frequency. "Commander, we're going dark. Maintain river surveillance. If Blackwood gets what he's after, he'll head straight for the water." The tunnel ahead split into 3 passages. Fresh tool marks around the rightmost entrance caught Marcus's attention. "They've been mapping the layout," he observed. "Professional work." "Blackwood's thorough," Emily replied, checking her own equipment. "He spent months planning this. The hat incident, the fake maintenance crew, even poor Robert Mitchell, all carefully orchestrated." A metallic clang echoed through the tunnels, followed by voices speaking in hushed tones. Marcus and Emily pressed against the wall, lights off, listening. "Boss wants this done in 10 minutes, a heavily accented voice said. "The boat's waiting." "These walls are reinforced," another replied. "Soviet-era security. It's going to take time." "Then work faster. The distraction teams can't hold forever." Marcus signaled to Emily. 3 men by the strong room entrance, at least 2 more guarding the approaches. Emily pointed to her eyes, then down another passage. She'd found a flanking route. The radio crackled quietly. "Turner, satellite thermal is showing something big. Multiple boats approaching Windsor from downstream. High-speed professional gear." "Extraction team," Emily breathed. "Blackwood's not planning to hide. He's going to run straight for international waters." Marcus processed this information. The explosions topside, the garden team, even the boats. Everything was positioned to cover a fast escape. Once Blackwood had what he wanted from the strong room, he'd disappear into the Thames, then out to sea before anyone could respond. "We need to move," Marcus whispered. "Emily, take the side passage. I'll approach from the main tunnel on my signal." Emily nodded, disappearing into the darkness with remarkable stealth for someone her age. Marcus moved forward, years of military training guiding each silent step. The voices grew louder. "Cut through here," someone ordered. "Bypass the electronic locks completely." A drilling sound echoed through the tunnel, accompanied by the screech of metal on metal. Marcus reached the final corner, peering around carefully. His night vision revealed 5 men working on the strong room's massive door. Professional equipment, military stances, these weren't common thieves. And there, directing them, stood Richard Blackwood himself, tall, elegant, with silver hair and an expensive suit despite the tunnel's dampness. He looked more like a bank executive than a master thief. "Status?" Blackwood demanded, checking his watch. "Outer layer breached," one of the men reported. "Inner doors next." "Good. Our window's closing. Turner and that MI5 relic are already in the tunnels." Marcus tensed. Blackwood knew they were coming, but how? "Sir," a new voice called from behind them. "We've got movement in the east tunnel." Blackwood smiled. "Right on schedule. Jones, Matthews, deal with our guests, but remember, I want Turner alive. He's insurance if things go wrong." Two men detached from the group, moving toward Emily's position. Marcus keyed his radio twice, warning her. Her reply came as too soft. Taps through the stone walls. Message received. The drilling continued as Marcus weighed his options. He could engage now, try to stop them before they breached the strong room. But Blackwood was ready for them, had planned for this confrontation. A sudden crash and shout from the side tunnel made everyone freeze. Gunfire erupted, then silence. "Jones? Matthews?" Blackwood called. No response. Marcus smiled. Emily Wright might be retired, but she hadn't lost her touch. "Find them," Blackwood ordered. Two more men moved toward the sound, leaving only Blackwood and one guard at the strong room door. It was time. Marcus stepped into the open, sword drawn. "That's far enough, Blackwood." The master thief turned slowly, unsurprised. Mr. Turner, I was wondering when you'd make your entrance." He gestured to the partially breached door. "I'm afraid you're a bit late. In about 2 minutes, I'll have what I came for." "The Soviets lost secrets." Marcus kept his voice. "A calm, moving steadily forward. Or something else?" Blackwood's eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh, you've been talking to Emily. Good. Then you know what's really in there. Tell me, Marcus, do you think your government wants those documents exposed? The deals, the betrayals, the things they did during the Cold War?" "You're not doing this for justice," Marcus replied. "You're doing it for money. There's always a market for secrets." Blackwood shrugged. "But right now, I'm doing this to survive, because in about 60 seconds, my men will return. Can you fight all of us while protecting Emily? She's good, but she's not young anymore." As if on cue, footsteps echoed from both side tunnels. But Blackwood had made a mistake. He'd assumed Emily would be the one needing protection. A sharp crack echoed through the tunnel as Emily's walking stick connected with someone's skull. Another crash, a grunt of pain, and then silence. "Actually," Emily's voice came from the darkness, "I'm feeling quite spry today." Blackwood's confident smile faltered slightly. His guard raised his weapon, but Marcus was already moving. His sword flashed in the emergency lights, knocking the gun aside before the pommel struck the man's temple. "It's over, Blackwood," Marcus said as Emily emerged from the shadows, her walking stick resting casually on her shoulder. "Your men are down, the river's blockaded, and that door isn't going to open." But Blackwood's smile returned, wider than ever. "My dear Marcus, what makes you think I needed to open it?" He held up a small device, a transmitter of some kind. "Technology's wonderful, isn't it? While my men made all that noise trying to cut through, a much smaller device was already inside, copying everything. Radio signals, you see, can go places men can't." Marcus lunged forward, but Blackwood had already pressed the button. A small red light blinked inside the strong room's ventilation grate. "Download complete," a computerized voice announced. "All that security," Blackwood said, almost sadly, "and no one thought to check for wireless signals. The Soviets couldn't hack it, but modern technology. Well, you understand." Emily moved faster than her age suggested, but Blackwood was already backing away. "The documents are already transmitting to my backup servers. In 10 minutes, they'll automatically upload to every major news outlet in the world. Unless..." "Unless what?" Marcus demanded. "Unless you let me walk out." "Of here," Your government can have the originals, keep up appearances, but I keep my copy. Insurance, you might say. Marcus and Emily exchanged glances. Blackwood had outplayed them. If those documents went public, the damage would be catastrophic. But then Emily smiled. You know what your mistake was, Richard? Blackwood's confidence wavered slightly. Oh? Thinking you were the only one who could hack that room. Emily held up her own device. MI5 never really lets you retire. We've been blocking your transmission since you started it. Your servers just downloaded several seasons of the Great British Bake Off. The color drained from Blackwood's face as he checked his phone. Error messages filled the screen. No, he whispered. No, no, no. Marcus stepped forward. Now, about that surrender. Blackwood's composure shattered. He turned to run, but Emily's walking stick shot out, catching his ankle. The master thief sprawled onto the tunnel floor as Marcus moved in to secure him. The great Richard Blackwood, Emily said, collecting his devices, brought down by an old lady with a stick and a guard you thought was just for show. Above them, the sounds of police and security teams echoed through the tunnels. Commander Hayes's voice came through their radios. Boat secured, suspects in custody, status. Marcus looked at Blackwood, now sitting dejectedly against the tunnel wall. Package secured, sir. Threat contained. The ancient tunnels beneath. Windsor Castle buzzed with activity as security teams secured the area. Richard Blackwood sat handcuffed against the damp stone wall, his expensive suit now covered in tunnel grime. The master thief's confident smirk had vanished, replaced by a calculating stare as he watched Marcus and Emily coordinate with the arriving teams. All access points secured, Commander Hayes reported through the radio. River units have detained 3 boats attempting to flee downstream, but we've got another problem. Marcus moved away from the group, lowering his voice. Go ahead, sir. Tommy Reed's crew is talking. Apparently, Blackwood has a contingency plan. If he doesn't make regular contact with certain individuals, sensitive information gets released automatically. Emily joined them, her walking stick tapping thoughtfully against the floor. Dead man's switch. Classic Blackwood. She glanced at the thief. He always has a backup plan. Marcus studied Blackwood's face, noting the slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He's too calm for someone who just failed. Turn her right, Hayes continued. We need to know what he's really after. The strong room breach, the Soviet documents. It feels like misdirection. Emily's eyes narrowed. The way he let himself get caught. Richard never gives up this easily. As if on cue, Blackwood spoke up. Emily, dear, still as sharp as ever. Tell me, have you checked on your friend in the garden recently? Emily's grip tightened on her walking stick. What friend? The elderly gentleman who's been monitoring the river exit for the past hour. Ex-military, about your age. Goes by the name James, I believe? Emily's face paled slightly. James Mitchell? He's not involved in this. No, Blackwood's smile widened. Then why has he been photographing the castle's security positions all morning? Marcus keyed his radio. Commander, we need a status check on all surveillance positions, particularly the river exit. Any observers in the garden area? Static crackled for a moment before Hayes responded. Negative on official observers, but we did log an elderly male taking photos. Security questioned him earlier. He had proper identification, claimed to be a military history enthusiast. Emily's expression hardened. James Mitchell was my partner at MI5 for 20 years. He retired the same time I did. Did he? Blackwood asked softly. Or did he just tell you he did? Marcus caught the subtle exchange of glances between Emily and Blackwood. There was history here, something deeper than a simple case of theft. Emily, Marcus said carefully, what aren't you telling me? Before she could answer, Multiple explosions rocked the tunnel system. Emergency lights flickered as dust and debris rained down from the ceiling. "Report!" Marcus shouted into his radio. "Multiple detonations in the garden." Hayes's voice was nearly lost in the chaos. "The river exit is compromised. We've got armed suspects breaching the perimeter." Blackwood laughed softly. "Right on schedule." Marcus spun toward the thief, but Emily's voice stopped him. "Marcus, James knows about the strong room. He helped design its security in '89. If he's working with Blackwood, then this whole thing was a setup," Marcus finished. "The documents, the boat escape, all of it was meant to draw security away from something else." More explosions echoed through the tunnels as armed response teams rushed past them, heading toward the breach. Blackwood remained seated, looking far too pleased for a man in custody. "Commander," Marcus called, "we need immediate containment." Around the strong room, the breach may have been a diversion. "Negative," Hayes replied. "We've got multiple casualties in the garden. All available units are responding to the surface attack." Emily stepped closer to Blackwood, her walking stick pressed against his chest. "What's James really after, Richard?" "You know, Emily, you're asking the wrong question." Blackwood's eyes gleamed in the emergency lights. "The real question is, why did he wait until today to make his move?" Marcus's tactical training kicked in as he processed the pieces. The timing, the elaborate distractions, the specific date. "The changing of the guard," he said suddenly. "Today's rotation involved moving the royal family's emergency protocols, standard procedure during any major security shift." Emily's face showed recognition. "The protocols are transported through the tunnel system to avoid public exposure." James would know that. He helped design the transfer route. Another explosion closer this time sent tremors through the stone walls. Marcus grabbed his radio. "Commander, where are the protocol documents now?" Static filled the channel for several seconds before Hayes responded. "Convoy departed the north tunnel entrance 10 minutes ago. Standard security escort, everything by the book." "Nothing standard about it," Emily said grimly. "If James has access to those protocols, he'll have everything: evacuation routes, safe houses, contingency plans, the entire royal family's security infrastructure." Blackwood shifted slightly, drawing their attention. "Tick-tock, my friends. James always was the impatient type." Marcus made a decision. "Commander, dispatch whatever units you can spare. To the convoy. Emily and I will handle the garden breach." "Negative," Hayes countered. "You need to secure the prisoner." "Sir, with respect, if we don't stop that convoy, we're going to lose a lot more than some Soviet secrets." A moment of silence, then, "Understood. Go." Marcus turned to the security team securing the tunnel. "No one goes in or out of this section. If Blackwood so much as blinks without permission, I want to know about it." Emily was already moving, her previous signs of age forgotten as she navigated the tunnels with practiced ease. "The fastest route to the surface is through the old wine cellar. We can cut through the castle grounds from there." They ran through the darkened passages, the sounds of combat growing louder above them. As they reached the cellar stairs, Emily caught Marcus's arm. "Marcus, about James." She hesitated. "There's something you need to know. The reason he's making his move today isn't just about the protocols." "What do you mean?" 30 years ago, James and I were part of a classified operation. Something went wrong, people died. James was blamed, but he always claimed he was set up. She met Marcus's eyes. "Today isn't just about stealing information, it's about revenge." Above them, gunfire erupted in the castle gardens. Marcus checked his equipment, making sure his sword was secure. "Then let's make sure he doesn't get either." They emerged into chaos. The pristine castle gardens had become a battlefield. Security teams traded fire with black-clad figures near the river entrance while tourists ran screaming for cover. Smoke from the explosions drifted across the grounds, reducing visibility. There! Emily pointed toward a group of vehicles speeding along the service road. That's not the standard convoy route. Marcus spotted an abandoned security motorcycle near the gate. "Can you still ride?" Emily's smile was fierce. "Like I said, some skills you never lose." As they mounted the motorcycle, Marcus keyed his radio one last time. "Commander, we've got eyes on the target. Request air support to track a convoy of 3 black SUVs heading east from the castle grounds." "Copy that. Police helicopters are en route, but Turner, be careful. We're getting reports of heavy weapons in the garden. Whatever James is planning, he came prepared." Marcus gunned the engine as Emily held tight behind him. The motorcycle roared to life, tires squealing as they shot through the castle gates. "You know," Emily shouted over the wind, "I'm starting to think you're more than just a ceremonial guard." Marcus allowed himself a small smile as they pursued the fleeing convoy. The day had started with a simple attempt to steal his hat. Now he was chasing a rogue MI5 agent through Windsor with a retired spy on the back of a stolen motorcycle. Just another day at Windsor Castle. The motorcycle roared through Windsor's streets as Marcus and Emily pursued the convoy of black SUVs. Tourists and locals scattered as they weaved through traffic, the castle's ancient walls receding behind them. "They're heading for the M4, Emily called over the engine's roar. "If James reaches the motorway, we'll lose him in traffic." Marcus pushed the motorcycle harder, years of tactical driving training taking over. The lead SUV was just visible ahead, running red lights and forcing other vehicles onto the sidewalk. "Commander Hayes," Marcus spoke into his radio. "Target vehicles heading east toward M4. Request traffic control assistance." "Copy that. Police are setting up roadblocks, but be advised, we've got reports of armed men in the convoy vehicles. Satellite shows at least 8 hostiles, possibly more." Emily's walking stick was strapped to her back as she held tight to Marcus. "James would have planned multiple escape routes. He knows every back road and secret path around Windsor." The convoy suddenly split, with 2 SUVs braking right while the lead vehicle continued straight ahead. Marcus kept following the lead car, trusting his instincts. "Why aren't they shooting at us?" he wondered aloud. "Because James wants us to follow," Emily replied grimly. "The protocols aren't his only target today." The lead SUV suddenly braked, tires screaming as it turned sharply into an industrial complex. Marcus followed, the motorcycle's tires skidding on loose gravel. They entered a maze of warehouses and shipping containers. "Turner," Hayes's voice crackled. "Thermal imaging shows the other vehicles converging on your position from the south. It's a trap." Marcus spotted movement in his peripheral vision. Armed figures taking positions on the warehouse roofs. The SUV had led them into a kill box. "Hold tight," he warned Emily, then gunned the engine. The motorcycle shot forward just as gunfire erupted from above. Bullets pinged off shipping containers as Marcus weaved through the complex. The lead SUV had stopped in a central courtyard. As Marcus and Emily approached, a figure stepped out, tall, distinguished, with military bearing. Despite his age, James Mitchell. "That's far enough," James called out, his voice carrying the weight of command. He held a metal briefcase, the stolen protocols. Marcus stopped the motorcycle, keeping the engine running. Emily dismounted slowly, retrieving her walking stick. "Hello, James," she said quietly. "Still playing both sides, I see." James's smile was cold. "Emily, you're looking well for someone who helped destroy my life." "You did that yourself," Emily replied. "Those agents died because of your choices." "My choices?" James's voice rose slightly. "I was following orders, our orders. But when it all went wrong, you let them blame me. 30 years, Emily. 30 years of watching my back, rebuilding my network, waiting for the perfect moment." Marcus kept his hand near his sword, counting armed men on the rooftops. At least 12, all with clear shots. The protocols won't change what happened. No, James agreed, but exposing the royal family's security infrastructure will shake the monarchy to its core. And more importantly, he looked at Emily, it will force the truth about 89 into the open. Emily's grip tightened on her walking stick. The truth? You sold information to the Soviets. 3 agents died in Budapest because of your intel. I was set up, James snapped. Someone leaked those documents, but it wasn't me. I've spent 3 decades tracking the real traitor. His eyes locked onto Emily. And I finally found them. Marcus felt Emily stiffen beside him. What are you talking about? James opened the briefcase, removing a yellowed folder. Interesting thing about old MI5 files. They keep multiple copies. I found this one buried in a KGB archive. The authorization for the Budapest operation didn't come from me. He threw the folder at Emily's feet. It came from you. Emily didn't move to pick it up. You're lying. Am I? James's smile returned. Why do you think Blackwood was so interested in the strong room? Those Soviet documents weren't just about state secrets. They were proof. Proof that you were the double agent, not me. Marcus watched Emily's face, seeing the subtle play of emotions. Emily? He's trying to confuse you, she said firmly. James always was good at manipulation. Then explain this. James held up a smartphone displaying an old photograph, MI5 surveillance photo, dated 3 days before Budapest. That's you, meeting with a known KGB handler. Emily's walking stick tapped once against the concrete. I was running a counterintelligence operation. You knew that. Did I? James's voice was razor sharp. Or was that just your cover? The perfect setup. Blame the ambitious agent who asked too many questions, while the real mole kept operating. Marcus's tactical training screamed that something was wrong. The armed men hadn't fired despite having clear shots. James was talking too much, revealing too much. Commander, he whispered into his radio, status on those other vehicles. Static answered him. Their communications were being jammed. Emily stepped forward, her posture changing subtly. You want the truth, James? Fine. Yes, I met with the KGB handler. Yes, I authorized the Budapest operation, but not for the reasons you think. James raised an eyebrow. Oh? We knew there was a mole in MI5, but we couldn't flush them out. So we created an operation too tempting to resist. Emily's voice was cold now, professional. We fed false intelligence through multiple channels, watching to see which one leaked. And naturally, it came through my channel, James said bitterly. No. Emily's words hit like bullets. It came through Blackwood's. The courtyard went silent. Marcus saw James's confidence waver slightly. Richard was MI5 too, Emily continued. Deep cover, handling our most sensitive Soviet operations. When the leak was traced to his network, he needed a scapegoat. You were perfect, ambitious, sometimes reckless, always pushing boundaries. James's hand tightened on the briefcase. You're lying. Am I? Emily smiled grimly. Why do you think Blackwood let himself get captured so easily? Why do you think he pointed you toward the protocols today? He needed you to expose yourself. Marcus understood suddenly. The dead man's switch. Blackwood's insurance policy wasn't about the Soviet documents. It was about James, Emily finished. If anything happens to Richard, proof of James's real activities goes public. Everything he's done since Budapest, the arms dealing, the intelligence trading, all of it. James's composure cracked. No, you're trying to confuse me. I saw the files. KGB forgeries, Emily said softly. Good ones. Richard always was thorough. The armed men on the rooftops shifted uneasily. Marcus realized they weren't James's men. They were Blackwood's, making sure James played his part. Why? James demanded. "Why let me believe it was you all these years?" "Because you were already compromised," Emily replied. "After Budapest, you made deals with the wrong people. Richard turned you into an asset, feeding you just enough truth to keep you angry, to keep you useful." Marcus saw James's hand move toward his jacket. "Emily, I know," she said quietly. Then louder, "Richard, send his regards." The armed men on the rooftops suddenly turned their weapons toward James. The old agent's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "All these years," he whispered, "everything I've done was exactly what Richard wanted," Emily finished. "He's been playing both sides for decades, James, and today you were going to be his final masterstroke, the disgraced agent who tried to destroy the monarchy, the perfect end to his career." James looked at the briefcase, then at the armed men surrounding him. 30 years of certainty crumbled in his eyes. "Commander Hayes," Marcus said quietly into his radio, hoping the jamming had lifted. "Status?" "Teams in position," Hayes replied. "SAS units have the complex surrounded. Blackwood's men on the roofs are contained." James heard the transmission. His shoulders slumped as the truth finally settled. "I never..." he started, and then stopped. "I really was the perfect fool, wasn't I?" Emily's voice softened slightly. "We all were, James. Richard played us all." The sound of helicopters filled the air as SAS teams rappelled into the courtyard. James didn't resist as they took him into custody. The protocols were secured, Blackwood's men surrendered, and the complex was locked down. As they watched James being led away, Emily's walking stick tapped thoughtfully against the ground. "Blackwood will be pleased," she said quietly. "His final game played out perfectly." Marcus looked at her sharply. "You knew about Richard's plan?" "Not all of it, but I knew he'd try to use James somehow. That's why I took the tour guide job at Windsor, waiting, watching for when he'd make his move." "And now?" Emily smiled sadly. "Now we find out what Richard's real endgame is. Because this..." She gestured at the complex. "This was just another move on his board." Marcus thought of Blackwood, sitting calmly in the tunnel beneath Windsor Castle. The master spy hadn't just planned for his capture, he'd counted on it. The game wasn't over, it was just... The journey back to Windsor Castle was tense with unanswered questions. Marcus piloted the motorcycle through the gathering dusk, while Emily maintained radio contact with Commander Hayes. Behind them, police escorts surrounded the vehicles transporting James Mitchell and the recovered protocols. "Status on Blackwood?" Marcus asked as they approached the castle gates. "Still secure in the tunnels," Hayes replied. "But he's been asking for you both. Says he has information we need to hear." Emily's walking stick tapped thoughtfully against the motorcycle's frame. "Of course he does. Richard always saves his best moves for last." The castle grounds were still in chaos from the earlier explosions. Emergency crews worked to clear debris while security teams reinforced damaged entry points. Tourists had been evacuated, leaving an eerie quiet around the normally bustling landmark. As they dismounted, Commander Hayes approached, his face grim. "We've got another problem. MI6 just contacted us. There's been a breach at 3 other royal residences." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "When?" "Within the last hour. Small teams, professional work. Nothing was taken, but they gained access to secure areas before being detected." "Testing the defenses," Emily said quietly. "Richard's showing us how vulnerable we are." They made their way back to the tunnels where Blackwood was being held. The master spy sat exactly as they'd left him, looking unfazed by his handcuffs or the armed guards. "Ah, the dynamic duo returns," Blackwood smiled. "I trust James provided an illuminating conversation." Emily stepped forward, her walking stick, striking the stone floor sharply. "Enough games, Richard. What's your real play?" "My dear Emily, always so direct." Blackwood's eyes gleamed in the emergency lighting. Tell me, what did you think of my little demonstration? 3 royal residences penetrated simultaneously. Quite impressive, wouldn't you say? Marcus moved closer, his voice hard. Those were your teams? Of course. Just like the ones currently positioned near Balmoral Castle, Sandringham House, and half a dozen other royal properties. Blackwood's smile widened. Would you like to know what they're carrying? Emily's face paled slightly. The protocols. You already had copies. Very good. Yes, James's little adventure with the originals was quite helpful in maintaining everyone's focus. Meanwhile, my other teams have been quietly testing each location's security responses. Commander Hayes grabbed his radio. All units, full lockdown at all royal residences. Repeat, full lockdown. Oh, please do, Blackwood interrupted. Show my teams exactly how you respond to threats. Every security measure you activate, every protocol you implement, they're watching, learning, adapting. Marcus's military training kicked in as he processed the implications. This isn't about stealing secrets. You're mapping the entire royal security network. Finally, someone who sees the bigger picture. Blackwood actually looked pleased. Do you know how much someone would pay for that kind of information? Every response pattern, every evacuation route, every safe house, all documented and analyzed. Emily's grip tightened on her walking stick. You're planning to sell it to the highest bidder, among other things. Blackwood shifted slightly, his handcuffs clinking. But here's the interesting part. You can't stop it. Even if you catch every one of my teams, the data is already being compiled. In fact, your current security response is providing the final pieces we needed. Commander Hayes cursed softly. Every countermeasure we're using is being studied and recorded, Blackwood finished. Quite the elegant solution, don't you think? Marcus studied the master spy's face, looking for any sign of deception. Why tell us this? Because, my dear Marcus, I'm offering you a choice. Blackwood leaned forward slightly. In exactly 1 hour, the compiled data will be automatically uploaded to secure servers. From there, it goes to my buyers. Unless what? Emily demanded. Unless you accept my deal. Let me go right now, and I'll give you the server locations. You can stop the upload, preserve the royal family's security infrastructure. He smiled thinly. Of course, I keep my insurance files, the ones detailing certain MI5 operations that neither you nor James would want exposed. Marcus looked at Emily, seeing the calculation in her eyes. We can't trust him. No, she agreed, but Richard never lies about his deals. It's bad for business. Hayes stepped forward. This is bigger than just Windsor Castle now. If that security data gets out, the entire royal family would be vulnerable, Emily finished. Every property, every movement, every safety measure, compromised. Blackwood watched them debate, looking supremely confident despite his restraints. Tick-tock, my friends. What's it to be? The satisfaction of keeping me locked up? Or the safety of the royal family? Marcus's mind raced through options. The teams at other residences could be caught, but the data was already collected. The uploads could potentially be blocked, but Blackwood's network was sophisticated. And even if they stopped everything, the master spy undoubtedly had more contingencies in place. Wait, Marcus said suddenly. The other residences, you said your teams are still in position. Of course, gathering final data as we speak. Marcus turned to Hayes. Commander, those sites are still active, which means... Hayes caught on immediately. We can track their communications. If they're uploading data, we can trace it back to the servers, Emily finished, a slow smile spreading across her face. Blackwood's confidence wavered slightly. You don't have time. The upload begins in less than an hour. Maybe, Marcus agreed, but your teams don't know we're onto them. They'll keep transmitting, keep gathering data, thinking they're undetected. Emily's walking stick tapped triumphantly. "And every transmission leads us closer to your servers. Commander," Marcus continued, "we need tech teams at every site. Monitor all frequencies, trace every signal. These aren't just thieves, they're data gatherers. They'll be sending constant updates." Hayes was already on his radio, coordinating with other security forces. Blackwood's smile had completely vanished now. "You're bluffing," he said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. "You can't track every team." "We don't need to," Emily replied. "We just need one good trace. Your buyers want comprehensive data, which means your teams have to be thorough, methodical, and most importantly, connected to your servers." Marcus watched as Blackwood's legendary composure finally cracked. The master spy had planned for every contingency except one. The possibility that his own thoroughness would be his undoing. "Even if you find the servers," Blackwood tried. "The encryption will take time to crack," Emily finished. "But not as long as you might think. MI5 has come a long way since your day, Richard." Hayes's radio crackled. "Sir, we've got signals, multiple frequencies, heavy data transmission. Beginning trace now." Blackwood actually flinched. "You don't understand. If that data doesn't upload on schedule, my buyers will—" "What?" Marcus asked quietly. "Release your insurance files? Expose old MI5 secrets? I think right now protecting the royal family's security infrastructure is worth that risk." Emily stepped closer to Blackwood, her voice dropping. "You taught me. Well, Richard, always have a backup plan, always maintain leverage. But you forgot the most important lesson. Never let your opponent know they've got nothing left to lose." The master spy's composure shattered completely. For the first time, real fear showed in his eyes. His buyers weren't just clients. They were dangerous people who didn't tolerate failure. "I can give you names," Blackwood said quickly. "My contacts, my buyers, everything." "Of course you can," Emily replied. "And you will. But first, we're going to find those servers. Then we're going to have a long chat about every operation you've run for the past 30 years. Commander Hayes's radio burst to life again. "Sir, we've got it. Server location confirmed. SAS teams are moving in now." Marcus watched as the last traces of confidence drained from Blackwood's face. The master spy slumped in his chair, decades of careful planning undone by the very precision that had made him legendary. "It's over, Richard," Emily said softly. "Time to start talking." But something in Blackwood's expression made Marcus uneasy. The spy's initial panic had faded, too quickly replaced by something else. Resignation. No, acceptance. "Commander," Marcus said sharply, "those servers, how heavily guarded are they?" Hayes pressed his radio. "Team leader, report status." Static answered him. "You really think I'd leave my servers unprotected?" Blackwood asked quietly. "Everything has a price, even failure." The radio suddenly crackled to life with urgent voices and the sound of distant explosions. "Multiple devices detected," someone shouted. "The whole building's rigged. Get those teams."
"Out of there!"
Hayes ordered, but Blackwood was already shaking his head. "The data's gone," he said simply. "Servers, backups, everything. A rather expensive solution, but necessary. And now..." The master spy's eyes met Emily's, and Marcus saw something pass between them. Decades of history, betrayal, and a final understanding. "Now," Blackwood continued, "we move to the contingency I didn't want to use. Emily knows what's coming. Don't you, old friend?" Emily's face had gone pale. "Richard, you didn't." "Incoming message from MI6, Hayes interrupted, checking his phone. "Multiple intelligence assets worldwide have gone dark. Sleeper agents, safe houses, operational protocols, everything's being exposed." "Not to my buyers," Blackwood said softly. "To everyone," Every intelligence agency, every criminal organization, every interested party, 30 years of secrets, all released simultaneously. Quite the grand finale, wouldn't you say? Marcus looked at Emily, seeing the weight of understanding. In her eyes, this hadn't just been about royal security or old MI5 operations. Blackwood had built a dead man's switch that would tear apart intelligence networks across the globe. The game wasn't over. It was evolving. Beginning. The emergency command center at Windsor Castle had transformed into a crisis hub. Multiple screens displayed news feeds and intelligence reports as the fallout from Blackwood's data dump spread across the globe. Marcus stood with Emily and Commander Hayes, watching as decades of secrets unraveled in real time. MI6 reports major compromises. In Eastern Europe, Hayes reported reading from his tablet. Safe houses exposed, agent covers blown. It's a bloodbath. Emily's walking stick tapped anxiously against the floor. Richard's insurance policy was more extensive than anyone imagined. He wasn't just collecting secrets, he was building a doomsday device for the intelligence community. Marcus studied Blackwood's face on the security feed. The master spy sat calmly in his cell, looking almost peaceful despite the chaos he'd unleashed. "He's still playing us," Marcus said quietly. "This isn't just about exposing secrets. He's forcing every intelligence agency in the world to react, to scramble their resources. Creating gaps in security," Emily nodded. "Opportunities that someone could exploit." Hayes's tablet chimed with new alerts. Interpol is reporting simultaneous breaches at high-security facilities across Europe. Banks, research centers, government, buildings, all hit within the last hour. Marcus's military training kicked in as he processed the pattern. The data dump isn't just exposure, it's coordination. Blackwood's giving multiple teams the intelligence they need to strike while defenses are compromised. "Sir!" a junior officer burst into the room. "We've got reports of armed intruders at the Tower of London. They're using MI5 protocols to bypass security." Emily's face hardened. The crown jewels. Richard's planning a masterpiece, the greatest theft in history, hidden in the chaos of his intelligence leak. Marcus was already moving. "Commander, we need immediate response teams at all royal holdings." Blackwood's original target wasn't just the security data. He wanted to create a window where every facility would be vulnerable at once. "Teams are mobilizing," Hayes replied, "but we're spread thin. Most units are still dealing with the data breach fallout." "Then we go," Emily said firmly. "The tower's primary security systems will be compromised, but I know the old protocols, the ones Richard helped design. He'll be expecting modern countermeasures, not outdated ones." Marcus checked his equipment while Hayes coordinated with tower security. "How many entrances?" "4 main gates, plus the river entrance," Emily replied. "But knowing Richard, his team will use the Traitor's Gate. It's symbolic, and he always did have a flair for drama." "Satellite footage confirms movement near the river entrance," Hayes reported. "Thermal imaging shows 8 to 10 individuals, heavily armed." Marcus studied the tower's layout on a nearby screen. "They'll need time to breach the vault. Even with compromised protocols, the physical security measures can't be rushed." 20 minutes minimum," Emily agreed. "Unless..." She paused, her eyes widening. "Check the staff roster. Anyone call in sick today?" Hayes quickly accessed the records. 3 guards and a maintenance worker, all verified illnesses, doctors, notes provided. "Richard's people," Emily said grimly. "They're already inside, probably have been for days. The river team is just their extraction." Marcus grabbed his radio and sword. "Commander, we need immediate helicopter transport to the tower, and I want snipers covering every possible exit point." "Already coordinating with City of London Police," Hayes confirmed. "But be careful, Blackwood's people will have contingency plans." Emily checked her own equipment, her walking stick now revealing hidden compartments with tactical gear. Richard's not done surprising us. This theft isn't just about the crown jewels, he's making a statement. As they headed for the helipad, Marcus caught Emily's arm. You know him best. What's his real endgame? Emily's eyes were distant, remembering. Richard always said the perfect crime isn't just about what you steal, it's about what you make. People believe he's not just taking the crown jewels, he's showing the world that nothing is truly secure. The helicopter was already spinning up as they approached. London's lights glittered below them as they lifted off, the towers ancient, walls visible in the distance. Multiple heat signatures converging on the jewel house, the pilot reported through their headsets. Security systems are offline. Marcus checked his tactical display. They're moving too confidently. They know exactly where the blind spots are, which protocols to use. Of course they do, Emily replied. Richard helped upgrade the tower's security in the 90s. He's probably been planning this since then. The helicopter banked sharply, approaching the tower from the riverside. Below, they could see movement near Traitor's Gate, dark figures securing boats for a water escape. Commander, Marcus called through his radio. Status on river blockade. Police boats are 3 minutes out, Hayes responded. But be advised, we're getting reports of explosives planted along the Thames. They're controlling our approach vectors. Emily's expression was grim. Classic Richard. He's not just planning the theft. He's choreographing how we respond to it. The helicopter touched down in the tower's central courtyard. Security teams were already engaging with intruders near the White Tower, drawing attention away from the jewel house. This way, Emily said, leading them through a side entrance. There's an old service tunnel that connects to the vault level. Richard knows about it, but he might not expect us to use it. They moved quickly through the ancient passages, the sounds of combat echoing above them. Marcus's tactical training noted every shadow, every potential ambush point. Wait, he whispered, holding up his hand. Ahead, barely visible in the dim light, a thin wire stretched across the corridor. Emily nodded approvingly. Tripwire, but knowing Richard, that's just the obvious one. They carefully examined the passage, finding 3 more hidden devices. Pressure plates, motion sensors, and an infrared beam. He's herding us, Marcus realized. These aren't meant to stop us. They're meant to slow us down, force us to take another route. Which means, Emily added, the real trap isn't here. It's wherever he wants us to go instead. Marcus studied the security layout on his tactical display. The main vault access is heavily guarded, and the emergency exits are compromised. Where would Richard expect us to enter from? Emily's eyes lit up. The restoration chamber. There's a maintenance shaft that leads directly to the vault level. Standard procedure would be to use that as an insertion point. So we don't, Marcus concluded. We take the hardest route, straight through their defenses. They won't expect a frontal assault, Emily agreed. Richard always plans for clever solutions, not direct ones. They backtracked to a junction, then moved toward the main vault corridor. The sounds of combat had faded, replaced by an eerie silence. Commander, Marcus whispered into his radio. Status on the intruders? 8 confirmed hostiles engaged. Near the White Tower, Hayes reported, but the vault team is already inside. Thermal imaging shows 3 individuals in the jewel house. They're already through the outer security, Emily said quietly. We've got minutes at best. Marcus checked his equipment one last time. Good thing we've got a royal guard and a retired spy who knows all the old tricks. Emily's smile was fierce. Let's remind Richard why he should have stayed retired. The corridors of the Tower of London echoed with distant gunfire as Marcus and Emily approached the jewel house. Emergency lights cast long shadows across centuries-old stone, their tactical lights revealing the path ahead. 3 hostiles inside the vault, Marcus whispered, checking his display. 2 more guarding the main entrance. Emily's walking stick tapped silently against the floor as she studied the security layout. They'll have disabled the primary alarm systems, but there's an old mechanical backup, one Richard helped install. Can we trigger it? Better. Emily smiled grimly. We can use it against them. The backup system includes pressure-sensitive flooring. If we can access the control room, we can invert the sensors. Commander Hayes' voice crackled in their earpieces. Be advised, River Team is reporting multiple boats approaching from upstream. High-speed vessels, heavily armed. Their extraction team, Marcus concluded. How long? 10 minutes, maximum. Police boats are engaged with the decoy explosives. Emily moved toward a service door, her expertise with the tower's layout evident in every step. The control room is 2 levels down. Richard would have posted guards. Marcus checked his tactical display again. 2 heat signatures in the corridor. Professionals based on their positioning. Then we do this the old way. Emily retrieved something from her walking stick, a small metallic sphere. Soviet design. Creates a localized electromagnetic pulse. Plays havoc with modern communications. They moved silently through the service door, descending stairs that predated most modern nations. The guards ahead were invisible from their position, but their shadows gave away their locations. Emily activated the device and rolled it down. The corridor. A soft pulse, barely audible, and the guards' radios erupted with static. Marcus moved fast, years of military training taking over. The first guard went down before he could raise his weapon, a precise strike rendering him unconscious. The second managed to turn, but Emily's walking stick caught him behind the knees, dropping him hard. Control room's through here, Emily said, accessing a keypad hidden behind an ancient tapestry. Richard always did appreciate the irony of hiding modern security behind historical artifacts. The room was a stark contrast to the tower's medieval atmosphere. Banks of monitors, modern computers and security feeds covering every angle of the jewel house. They've disabled the main systems, Emily noted, fingers flying over keyboards. But the mechanical backups run on a separate circuit. Independent power, independent controls. Marcus watched the security feeds as Emily worked. The vault team was professional, methodical in their approach to the crown jewels display cases. Commander, he called quietly. Status on those boats? 7 minutes out. Police are engaging, but these guys are good. They're going to break through. Emily's typing paused. Marcus, look at this. The vault team. They're not just disabling security, they're recording it. The feeds showed one of the thieves meticulously documenting each security measure, each bypass method. Blackwood's not just stealing the crown jewels, Marcus realized. He's creating a blueprint, a perfect record of how to breach one of the most secure facilities in Britain, which means the real prize isn't the jewels, Emily added grimly. It's the methodology. He's planning to sell the entire operation, plans, techniques, everything needed to replicate it. Marcus's tactical mind raced ahead. Every high-security facility in the world would need to be re-evaluated. Billions in security upgrades, years of work. And Richard sells the solutions, Emily finished. He's not just profiting from the theft, he's creating a whole new market. The perfect crime isn't the heist, it's the chaos that follows. A new alert flashed on the monitors. The vault team had breached the final security layer. Got it, Emily announced, her fingers completing a complex sequence. Inverting pressure sensors. Now. On the screens, the vault floor suddenly lit up with activation signals. The thieves froze, realizing their careful plans had just been compromised. Their comms are still down from the EMP, Marcus noted. They can't warn the extraction team. Emily was already moving. Secondary entrance is through here. We can flank them while they're confused. They rushed through narrow passages, Emily's knowledge of the tower's layout proving invaluable. The vault entrance appeared ahead, its massive doors standing open. Inside, the three-man team was scrambling to adjust to the changed security landscape. Display cases containing centuries of royal history surrounded them, their contents worth millions. "Step away from the cases," Marcus called out, his voice carrying the full weight of authority. "It's over." The thieves spun, weapons raised, but Emily had already activated another device. A high-pitched whine filled the air, and the tactical gear, designed to work with Blackwood's stolen protocols, began malfunctioning. "Richard's not the only one who kept old toys," Emily said softly. The lead thief, a tall woman with close-cropped hair, smiled thinly. "Emily, right? Richard said you might show up. Did he tell you what happened to the last team he sent against me? He told us everything." The woman's smile widened, "Including why this is personal for you." Marcus saw Emily stiffen slightly. "What's she talking about?" "Ask her about Prague," the thief suggested, "about what really happened when—" Emily's walking stick whipped out, faster than seemed possible, catching the woman's wrist. The gun clattered to the floor. "Prague is ancient history," Emily said coldly, "just like you're about to be." The other thieves moved to attack, but Marcus was already in motion. His sword, which had drawn snickers from the tower's regular security, proved devastatingly effective in the confined space. Within seconds, both men were disarmed and down. "Commander," Marcus called, "vault secured, 3 suspects in custody. Copy that, but we've got problems. Those boats are still coming and they're not slowing down. Impact with river defenses. Expected in 4 minutes." The lead thief laughed softly. "You really think this is over? Richard's planned for everything. The jewels were never the real target." Emily's walking stick pressed against the woman's throat. "Explain?" "Check the cases," she gasped. "Really check them." Marcus moved to the nearest display, studying the crown within. At first glance, it looked perfect. But then, "These aren't the real crown jewels," he said quietly. "They're replicas, good ones, but—" Emily's face paled. "When? How?" The thief smiled again. "Remember those sick guards? They've been here for days. The real jewels are already gone. We're just the distraction." Commander Hayes's voice crackled urgently. "Multiple explosions reported at other royal sites. Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, even Balmoral. All happening now." "Richard's master stroke," the thief said proudly. "While everyone focuses on the obvious target, his real teams move elsewhere. The Tower of London attempt was always meant to fail. Spectacularly, publicly, drawing every resource you had." Marcus's mind raced. "The boats approaching are empty," she confirmed. "More theater. Richard loves his productions." Emily's grip tightened on her walking stick. "Where are the real jewels? Ask yourself why Richard let himself get captured, why he's still sitting calmly in his cell." The thief's eyes gleamed. "Everything that's happening? It's all part of the plan, and you're exactly where he wants you to be." Before anyone could react, alarms began blaring throughout the tower. Not security alarms, evacuation warnings. "Commander," Marcus called, urgently. "Multiple devices detected throughout the tower complex," Hayes reported. "Chemical sensors are—" "Oh God, get out of there now. The whole place is compromised." The thief's smile was triumphant. "Right on schedule." Emily grabbed Marcus's arm. "We need to move, now." As they rushed from the vault, securing the prisoners as they went, Marcus's tactical training struggled to process the layers of deception. The fake jewels, the obvious theft attempt, the boats, all elaborate misdirection. "Emily," he said, as they reached the upper levels, "what aren't you telling me about Prague?" Her face was grim in the emergency lights. "Later! Right now we need to focus on Richard's real plan, because this—" She gestured at the chaos around them. "This is just the opening act. The evacuation sirens echoed through the Tower of London's ancient stones as Marcus and Emily rushed through corridors filled with swirling emergency lights. Behind them, chemical sensors continued their urgent warnings, while security teams evacuated staff and secured prisoners. Command Center reports rising toxin levels in the lower levels. Commander Hayes' voice crackled through their earpieces. Hazmat teams are 15 minutes out. Emily's walking stick tapped rapidly against stone as they moved. Richard wouldn't use anything lethal. Too messy, too many variables. This is something else. They reached the main courtyard where emergency vehicles were already arriving. The Thames glittered beyond the walls, the promised boats now visible and indeed apparently empty. Another piece of Blackwood's elaborate deception. All units evacuated from the Jewel House, Marcus reported into his radio. Prisoners secure, but the crown jewels were switched days ago. It gets worse, Hayes replied. We're getting reports from Windsor Castle. The items Blackwood's team tried to steal earlier, they were forgeries too. The real artifacts were replaced weeks ago. Emily's face hardened. Of course, Richard wasn't trying to steal them today. He already had them. This whole operation was theater, designed to hide the fact that the real thefts happened long ago. Marcus processed this information as they helped coordinate the evacuation. The chemical attack, the boats, the data breach, all smoke screens. Partly, Emily paused, watching as hazmat teams began arriving. But knowing Richard, they serve multiple purposes. He never wastes an opportunity. As if confirming her words, new alerts began flooding their communications. The chemical sensors at the tower were being matched at other sites across London. Parliament, the Bank of England, the National Gallery, Hayes listed grimly, all reporting similar chemical signatures. Every major security force in London is about to be occupied with evacuations and containment. Emily's eyes narrowed, creating a citywide distraction. But for what? Marcus studied the tactical displays on his mobile unit. Look at the pattern. The chemical alerts form a perimeter, pushing emergency services into specific sectors. Controlling the response vectors, Emily nodded. Just like he did with the boats, Richard's choreographing how London's security forces deploy. A new voice cut into their radio channel, Blackwood himself speaking from his cell at Windsor Castle. Very good, the master spy said smoothly. I was wondering how long it would take you to see the design. Tell me, Emily, do you remember Budapest? How we used citywide emergencies to mask our real operations? Emily's grip tightened on her walking stick. That was different, Richard. We were serving crown and country then. Were we? Or were we just telling ourselves that to justify the things we did? Blackwood's voice carried an edge of challenge. Prague certainly suggested otherwise. Marcus saw Emily flinch slightly at the mention of Prague again. But before he could question it, Hayes broke in. New situation, the commander reported urgently. Bank of England's security system just went dark, complete shutdown. Blackwood's soft laughter filled their earpieces, right on schedule. You see, while London's finest are dealing with my little chemical theatre, other teams are moving freely through the gaps we've created. The crown jewels were just the beginning. The bank's vault, Emily breathed. That's your real target. Among others. Did you really think I'd settle for just one prize? London is full of treasures, and right now, most of them are wonderfully unprotected. Marcus was already moving toward their vehicle. Commander, we need teams at the bank. Immediately. Negative, Hayes replied. All available units are committed to evacuation protocols. Chemical threats take priority over potential theft. Exactly, Blackwood said, satisfaction evident in his voice. Safety first, after all. Protocol demands it. The same protocols I helped design over the years. Emily suddenly grabbed Marcus's arm. Wait, The chemical alerts, the security gaps. Richard, you're not just stealing artifacts. Finally, Blackwood sighed. I was wondering when you'd make the connection. Make what connection? Marcus demanded. He's not stealing things. Emily explained, her face pale. He's stealing something far more valuable. He's stealing procedures, every emergency response, every security protocol, every contingency plan. He's forcing the entire city to demonstrate exactly how it handles a crisis. Marcus understood suddenly. Complete security documentation, not just for one facility, but for every major institution in London. The perfect blueprint, Blackwood confirmed. Every reaction mapped, every procedure documented, every weakness exposed, worth far more than mere jewels or gold bars. Sir? A junior officer rushed up, tablet in hand. We're getting reports of similar chemical alerts in Paris, Berlin, and Rome, all major security facilities affected. Blackwood's smile was audible. Did you think I'd limit myself to just one city? Today, every major European capital is giving away its secrets, showing exactly how it responds to threats. My teams are recording everything. Emily's walking stick struck the ground sharply. Your buyers don't want the crown jewels. They want the security data. Now you're thinking like your old self, Blackwood approved. Remember how we used to map Soviet responses during the Cold War? Same principle, much grander scale. Marcus watched as more emergency vehicles rushed past, their sirens adding to the chaos. We need to shut this down. Too late, Blackwood replied. The data's already being collected, and the best part? Every attempt to stop it only provides more valuable information. It's quite elegant, really. Emily's voice was cold. What happened to you, Richard? You used to protect these secrets, not sell them. I grew up, dear Emily. Realized that loyalty to crown and country was a young person's game. There's a whole world of buyers out there, governments, corporations, private collectors. They don't just want artifacts, they want knowledge, and today they're getting everything they paid for. New alerts flashed across their tactical displays. The chemical sensors were showing changing patterns, forcing security teams to adjust their responses. He's testing adaptability, Marcus realized, seeing how services react when situations change. Very good, Marcus, Blackwood approved. You know, Emily, he reminds me of how you used to be, before Prague changed everything. Emily's face hardened. We're not discussing Prague. No, but it's so relevant to today's activities. After all, that's where you first learned that sometimes the biggest secrets are hidden in plain sight. Just like today's little performance. Marcus studied Emily's expression, seeing the conflict there. What happened in Prague? But before she could answer, Hayes's voice cut in urgently. Multiple explosions reported at Tower Bridge. Structure compromised. River traffic is... The transmission dissolved into static as new alarms began blaring across the city. Phase 2 begins, Blackwood announced calmly. I suggest you choose your next response carefully. After all, everyone's watching. Smoke billowed from Tower Bridge as Marcus and Emily raced through London's chaos-filled streets. Emergency vehicles clogged every major route, their sirens creating a constant wail that echoed off centuries-old buildings. The explosion had severed one of the city's main arteries, forcing emergency services to adapt their response patterns, exactly as Blackwood had planned. Bridge structure is compromised, Commander Hayes reported through their earpieces. Thames traffic completely halted. Emergency services are being redirected to alternate routes. Emily studied the tactical display as Marcus navigated through the gridlocked traffic. The explosions weren't meant to destroy the bridge. They're precisely placed to create specific traffic patterns. Forcing predictable responses, Marcus agreed, swerving around a stalled emergency vehicle. Every service has protocols for bridge failures. Blackwood's mapping them all. Their radio crackled with Blackwood's voice again. Very good. You know, Emily, You taught me that technique in Moscow. How to use infrastructure to control population, movement. That was different, Emily snapped. We were evacuating civilians from danger. Were we? Or were we just telling ourselves that? Rather like Prague, wouldn't you say? Marcus caught the tension in Emily's face. We need to know about Prague. Whatever happened there is clearly part of this. Emily's walking stick tapped against the floor of their vehicle. Prague was complicated. Richard and I were tracking Soviet sleeper agents. We found something else instead, evidence of corruption within our own ranks. Oh, come now, Blackwood interrupted. Tell him the whole truth. Tell him what you really found. Tell him about Operation Mirror Glass. Before Emily could respond, new alerts flooded their tactical display. The chemical sensors across London were showing evolving patterns, forcing security teams to constantly adjust their containment strategies. The toxin levels are changing, Marcus noted. Different concentrations in different areas. Part of the test, Emily explained grimly. Richard's not just mapping initial responses, he's documenting how services adapt to changing threats. Hayes's voice cut in urgently. New situation at the Bank of England. Security systems are back online, but they're showing unauthorized access attempts from within the building. Of course they are, Blackwood said smoothly. While everyone focuses on external threats, internal systems become so much more vulnerable. Rather like what happened in Prague, wouldn't you say, Emily? Emily's face hardened. Marcus, we need to get to the bank, now. Too late, Blackwood replied. My teams are already inside, but they're not there for what you think. The vault is merely... What's the phrase? Ah, yes, a red herring. Marcus processed this as they approached the Bank of England's imposing facade. Emergency vehicles surrounded the building, their lights painting the classical architecture in swirling patterns of red and blue. Commander, Marcus called. Status on the bank's internal systems? Multiple breaches detected, but nothing's being stolen. They're just accessing files, technical documentation, security protocols, personnel records. Emily's eyes widened. It's not about the money. He's after the bank's security architecture, building plans, response procedures, staff protocols. Everything needed to completely map how one of the world's most secure financial institutions operates. Very good. Blackwood's approval was evident. You know, Marcus, she was always the quickest to see the bigger picture until Prague clouded her judgment. Marcus parked their vehicle as emergency teams rushed past. Emily, we need to know what happened in Prague. Emily's grip tightened on her walking stick. We discovered that someone had been selling our security protocols to foreign powers. Not just current procedures, but our entire methodology. How we developed security systems, how we trained personnel, everything. And who was doing the selling? Marcus pressed. We never found out. The evidence disappeared and 3 agents died trying to recover it. Emily's voice was tight with old pain. The case was closed, labeled as a failed operation against Soviet agents. But that's not the whole truth, is it? Blackwood's voice was gentle now, almost sympathetic. Tell him who ordered the operation closed. Tell him who buried the evidence. Before Emily could respond, new explosions rocked the city, this time from the direction of Parliament. Multiple detonations at Westminster, Hayes reported. Same pattern as Tower Bridge, precise charges designed to control access rather than destroy. The final phase begins, Blackwood announced. Now, while London's emergency services are stretched to their limit, my teams are documenting every response, every adaptation, every protocol, the perfect security blueprint, not just for one facility, but for an entire city. Marcus watched as more emergency vehicles rushed past, their routes predictable, their responses following established patterns. You're not just selling security data, you're selling London itself, every weakness, every vulnerability, every possible point of exploitation. Think bigger, Blackwood urged. London is just the demonstration. Today, every major European capital is giving away its secrets. Paris, Berlin, Rome, all of them showing exactly how they handle crisis situations. The perfect blueprint for anyone wanting to understand how modern cities protect themselves. Emily suddenly straightened. The evidence from Prague. You didn't destroy it, did you? Finally, Blackwood sighed. I was wondering when you'd make that connection. You kept it, Emily continued, added to it, spent decades collecting more security data, more protocols, more procedures. Today isn't just about mapping current security, it's about proving a point. What point? Marcus asked. That she should have listened to me in Prague, Blackwood replied. When I tried to show her that our entire approach to security was fundamentally flawed, that protecting secrets with more secrets only creates bigger vulnerabilities. New alerts flashed across their tactical displays as the chemical sensors began showing different patterns again. The toxin levels, Marcus noted, they're not just changing randomly, they're forcing specific responses in specific areas. Driving emergency services into predetermined patterns, Emily agreed, creating a perfect map of how London protects itself, and not just London. Every major city, Blackwood confirmed, all giving away their secrets, all following their protocols, all demonstrating exactly how they respond to threats. The perfect security blueprint, demonstrated live for anyone willing to pay for it. Marcus's tactical training kicked in as he processed the implications. But that means... Yes, Emily finished grimly. Today isn't just about stealing information. It's about proving that every security system, every protocol, every procedure we've built, they're all predictable, all exploitable, and all for sale, Blackwood added softly. Welcome to the future of security warfare, my friends. Today, London dances to my tune. Tomorrow, well, that depends on who's willing to pay the highest price. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for part 12. Will Marcus and Emily stop Blackwood's master plan? What really happened in Prague? Leave your theories in the comments below. Up next, you've got 2 more incredible stories waiting for you. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss them. Just click to check them out.